All right, welcome back to Real Migos. We have an amazing guest today, Nick Shah, CEO of HOME.LLC. If you've been paying attention to the housing market, you've probably come across many articles. One I just saw from Fortune. He did an interview with Lance Labert talking about the housing market, talking about what was happening. So I appreciate for the people that jumped on to this special Real Migos at this special time on Friday. Nick Shah, good to see you. Thank you.
Yeah, great to see you both.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit. So I want to get into the Austin market and what you think about the Austin market, because that was part of what you've talked about, I believe, with Lance Lambert. But I want to get into kind of a little bit about you and your company, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. So HOME.LLC we are building HOME.LLC to become the home of home ownership. And we want to help people buy homes, own homes, and sell homes on our platform. And we are slowly, continuously building towards achieving that utopia.
Amazing. Okay. So you last year for 2023 came out with a prediction for the 2023 market. You said, if I'm not mistaken, between 4% and 6% is what I think you said. And we ended up right around the 4% range, positive year over year. Take us through how your company does the data behind that, because I know they talked about in the article, but I'd love to hear it from you.
Yeah, so depending on which home price index you look at, we'll probably end 2023 around 5.1%, which is exactly in the middle of the range. The 4% number is still November because Case-Shiller index, data is reported 2 months late. So yeah, we were pretty accurate in our prediction. And the reason, primary reason why we were more accurate than everyone else is we were able to factor in the effect of supply much more effectively than all other housing economists in the country. Everyone in the country could see that demand was declining, and almost every housing economist predicted that. And for whatever reason, their models also predicted that supply would increase, leading to home prices flattening or even decreasing. I mean, we have seen predictions go all the way down to minus 22% in annual home price change to like plus 3%. We were the most bullish as well as, most precise in this. So what happened in 2023 was, yes, demand fell. Demand, if you look at mortgage loan origination data, it was down. If you look at home sales ended between like 4 to 4.3 million for the year versus close to 7 million in the previous year. So home sales were down dramatically, but supply fell faster than demand. Right. And supply, what most people in the country don't realize is that a super majority of supply comes from resales, not new construction. So there are three types of supply. There's supply when you sell your current home, that's resale. There's supply when you build a new home, that's new construction. And then supply when you're forced to sell your home, which is delinquencies or foreclosures. And resales historically have made about 90% of supply, plus or minus. Last year, resales made a much smaller percentage of supply. They made something in the range of 70% of supply because, there was just no resale supply. I mean, I'm sure if you talk to most homeowners in the country, especially a super majority of those who lock their rates sub 6%, sub 5%, sub 4%, I'm at a sub 3%. Most people are just not looking to sell their home unless they're forced to. Why would you let go of such a low mortgage? So most supply of inventory comes from resales, and in resales, most resales were locked into a super low interest rate, and that supply dropped way faster than demand for homes fell. And because of that, when people did go out to buy homes, about 4 million homes were still sold in 2023. When those people went out to buy homes, there just weren't homes available for sale, so they were still forced into competitive or pseudo competitive situations where they had to bid at least at listing price or very close to listing price to be able to buy their home. And that's what led to, home prices growing. The second reason why that happened is just the way Case-Shiller index calculates data. So the way indexes calculate data is based on repeat home sales data. So they track the price of a basket of homes over time, over repeat transactions, to see how those prices changed. And most of the homes coming to market, at least in supply constrained markets, not Texas, but if you look at the coastal markets, were homes that were coming on sale from many, many years before, right? Where the homeowner had deceased, or they were living in the home for 20, 30 years and just wanted to sell the home and downsize. And those homes obviously got the fair price on the market as well, right? So fundamentally, in the end, supply declined faster than demand, and that's why home prices still increase in 2023, and that's the reason why we're still thinking home prices will keep increasing in 2024.
Interesting. I want to get to your 2024 prediction. One question I had was, you said that everybody saw that the buyer demand was dropping or going to be dropping, but then supply dropped faster than demand. What was it that how was it that everyone saw demand dropping? Was it primarily because rates were going up at such a quick pace? Is that why demand fell? Or was it just fatigue in the market?
Yeah. So if you think about demand, it comes from three factors, right? There is overall demand, which is population growth and demographic changes. And there are a lot of tailwinds there, right? But US population is still growing, as well as the millennial demographic is finally hitting the 30 to 40-year age range, which is a prime age range for buying net new purchases of homes, right? People buying first-time homes, where you move out of a rental unit and buy a home. So you're a net new home owner in the market. So that is the first category. Second category is affordability. Like, do I want to buy a home? Second is, can I afford one right now? And third is desirability. If I want to buy a home and I can afford it, is this home home desirable enough for me? Is it in the right market and the right neighborhood for me? In terms of population demographics, there were tremendous tailwinds, right? In terms of affordability, yes, affordability took a massive hit. Affordability is near all-time lows right now, not just because interest rates are high, but also because incomes didn't keep up with the rate of home price increases. Home prices have increased 40% in the last 3 years. Incomes have not. So
yeah.
Affordability has taken a massive hit, but at the third demand came from desirability, right? Which is like, people still like, there's something about in your 30s, when you're starting a family for the first time, there's a primitive need that kicks in, saying, I need a permanent roof over myself, I need a permanent shelter. And there was still strong desirability. So while affordability took a hit, demographics and desirability did not.
Nick, we've seen a lot of people relocate as a result of this home affordability. Do you see that trend continuing over the next year or 2 years?
Yeah, so we call it domestic migration, right? So domestic migration is a big factor in states, especially like Texas and Florida, where they make up a decent percentage. But if you look at really double click into domestic migration numbers, it's a pretty small fraction. Like California, yes, California has a population of about 39.5 million, 40 million, plus or minus 5%. California lost about 400,000 residents, right? But for California, that's like a 0.1% decline, if my math is right. But when those 400,000 people go to a state which is only 3 million population or 2 million population, then they see a real percentage increase in demand, right? So the story is true in both scenarios, where yes, New York, California have seen negative domestic migration since years. Like the population of New York and the LA metro area has been declining since 10 years. Yet home prices have kept increasing there because incomes are increasing faster than demand is decreasing, right? It's basically mass gentrification. So yes, domestic migration does play a role. And when you see people, in Texas and Florida coming from California and New York, people with higher budgets, because most of their incomes come from high wage industries like tech and finance, and they buy a home, or they are able to bid on a home and buy it when there are multiple bids on a home, it kind of feels real to you, but it's still in the single digit percentages or small percentages of the total demand. Most of the demand still comes from domestic demand from local in the area itself. Domestic migration is real, but it's not as big. It's not like 10, 20, 30, 40% where you see a real change, right? It's still in the low single digit percentages of the overall population.
One thing that I've talked about, Ian and I have talked about on my channel and on Real Migos, this is the Real Migos part of the channel. One thing I've talked about is that, there's a lot of faux analysts on YouTube that say, okay, this market's going to crash because of this. This market's going to be crash. Obviously the word crash had for a while sold on YouTube. Yet one thing that I never saw any of these people really talk about was the amount of people, if you look at domestically, moving into that 33 to 34, 35 age range, which is the prime buying range. And it's the highest it's been and going to be for a very long time right now. So that's why I've said demand isn't necessarily going to go away. Affordability will chip at that. But when you have that many buyers in the pool, now the question we'll see going forward, I'm sure you're looking at, is this silver tsunami around 2030, when a lot of these people that are unfortunately moving on to new locations, and I don't mean physical locations, is that something that you've put into your analysis as well when you're looking at 24 and beyond?
Yeah, over a 7-year range, like after 2030s, I'm definitely currently bearish about home prices.
Okay.
For 3 reasons, right? If you look at demographics, which is the first cause of demand, demographics are going to take a hit. Like you said, boomers are going to age in place, and the cohort behind millennials, Gen Zs, are a much smaller cohort than millennials.
Mm-hmm.
So the population of Gen Z is looking to buy homes is going to be a much smaller cohort of demand. The second is affordability. It's like when Gen Zs do come into the market, they will face a steep affordability challenge, right? Much steeper, because home prices will keep growing or staying stable or growing gradually over the next 5, 6, 7 years. While in 2040s, it will really, they will be the ones who will be hurt by this the most. And finally, in terms of desirability, like, a lot of people, while there's still going to be this need of home buying, that need is tied so strongly to, growing the size of your family, right? Either having a permanent partner or growing the size of your family, either by, having more kids or more parents staying with you all the time. We don't see those, we clearly see in the Gen Z cohort that, they're getting married later and they're having kids later and all of that. So overall, if you look at the US population growth rate, it's in the low single digit percent. It's like some less than 1% a year. Last I checked, it was like 0.6%. Out of that 0.6%, 2/3 of that 0.6 is legal immigration.
Right.
So only 1/3 of overall population growth comes from birth rates minus death rates. So the overall US population is growing at such a slow pace, and that population will decline after a while, because legal immigration will not be able to compensate for declining birth rates at one point. So with a declining population, worsening demographics, terrible affordability, and still like a delayed desirability of buying a home, we will see a massive demand hit in home buying. Now look at supply. Supply is going to keep increasing as boomers keep aging in place. So we will see overall a housing market decline. Now, and under what scenarios could that not be true? And that is what I highlighted with Lansing. Unless there's a dramatic change in legal immigration laws, where that compensates for demographics. And legal immigrants also, tend to be more highly educated just based on the way our immigration system works, the professional visa works. They have to have a certain minimum salary. They have to have, certain job qualifications in STEM. They will probably be able to save the market. Otherwise, the market will decline over the long term.
One thing that I've thought, sorry to cut you off, Ian, one thing that has been on my mind as we have a population aging further, in my mind, I see a transfer of wealth happening. So you're talking about the age range under millennials. My wonder and question is, going into 2030 plus, do we see a transfer of wealth? Because as those people unfortunately move on, that wealth is going to go somewhere else. And I know I've seen really things in the government where they're trying to really go after inheritance taxes and things like that, increase those, because they know there's a lot of money going to be made past 2030. So do you think some of that transfer of wealth will help some of those people purchase that wouldn't have been able to purchase?
Yeah. If you look at like the US Census numbers on families earning less than $150,000 a year, a super majority of their wealth is in home equity.
Mm-hmm.
And that transfer of wealth is essentially basically saying, hey, I'm going to sell this home in Gary, Indiana, that no one wants to live in anymore, and use that money hopefully to be able to afford a down payment in San Jose, California, or Santa Monica, Los Angeles, or Upper East Side, New York, or Bellevue, Washington, or Park Slope, Utah, right? So that transfer of wealth essentially is selling homes in areas where you don't want to live anymore, and then using that home equity to essentially buy homes where you do want to live. And when areas with a lot of home equity in boomers concentration, uh, areas with a lot of boomers who have a lot of home equity, are not as desirable as other areas of the country, right? So that those markets will see a dramatic impact on home prices, because everyone there essentially selling homes, and who's buying, right? Like who wants to move to Gary? Like, it's not a dig on Gary, Indiana, but that's just one market we know where like there's a heavy concentration of boomers, and there's still 20% vacancy rate in that market.
So you mentioned a lot of stuff. There's been a lot of stuff happening. So you talked about legal immigration. So I want to touch on that one for a minute. So you have right now, the highest income earners are legal immigrants and visa holders. Okay. But we know that currently, at least we see that currently, the cultures send the money out of the US, right? So if they're sending the money out of the US, do you think that improving immigration will help keep that money here and help people buy houses here? Or how do you see that playing out if they adjust the immigration?
That's a very good point. I mean, I don't have the data on what percentage of wealth legal immigrants hold is concentrated in the US versus not. But overall, if you look at their W-2s and their savings from stocks, I'm specifically talking about like the STEM population, right? Predominantly of Indians and Asians. They tend to have, just from a segmentation perspective, Indian Americans are the highest median income in the country, right? It's
Exactly.
about $120,000 versus the median income in the rest of the country is about $55,000-$60,000. So they based on W-2s and all that, they're just like more capable of buying homes, right, than others, and more capable of bidding more and
right.
using.
But I'm looking at it like if the whole idea is that you're immigrating your family, but you don't have a family that can come over and work with you, why would you buy the nice new construction large house? Like, why would you do that if you don't have a family to bring to live in it?
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
And I feel like that is. Go ahead, Jeremy.
I was gonna say, well, I work with a large Indian population, right, that are of the STEM, right, that are heavily into tech and engineering and things like that. And a lot of them are very savvy and understand the value of buying a home, right? I have clients that literally have 2,500 square foot homes that they occupy one room of, and the rest of the house is vacant. So I've seen it. I want to transfer into 2024 because we don't have a ton of time left. I want to get into your overall just quick insights for 2024, and then why you're bearish, right? Bearish on Austin, or bullish, I can't remember, on Austin in 2024.
I hope it's bullish.
Yeah. So national market, our prediction for 2024 is +4% to +7%. So median case of +5.5, a bear case of +4, and a bull case of +7. The bull case of +7 is based on, at least a 1% decline in the federal FOMC rate, the federal funds rate set by the federal the Federal Board of Directors. And the bearish case is based on basically affordability still being a massive headwind in this market, while cracks visible in supply, where people finally need to sell their home, even if they have a super low rate, because of life events like divorces and deaths and other events where they just need to sell their home because they have to sell their home, right? It's still the most bullish among, even our bearish case is the most bullish among housing economists. Like most of the predictions we have seen are from -3% to +2.9%. Although like a day after we published a report, Zillow upped their predictions to +3.5%. Yeah, mean case. So
I saw that.
they're getting close, but yeah, the bearish scenario among the broader consensus in the market is still -3 to +3.5 now. In terms of the Austin, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, what do you need to see change in order to adjust your opinion?
So we will primarily be track-safe. Our bullish case is more likely to become a reality if the Fed starts dropping rate in the February or the March meeting, before the summer and the spring housing boom starts. If they drop rates before, there will be, we know that for every 1% drop in rates, about 5 million new home buyers are eligible to buy their home right now, right? And the total supply of homes in the country right now is barely around a million. It's between 1.1 to 1.25 million units, depending on which month you're looking at. So very few homes still available in the market. Home sellers are still not budging. New construction is there, but it's not as big as most people think, and it's concentrated in markets like Texas and Georgia and Florida and Utah and Idaho, not really in the coastal markets, right? And versus demand is still going to be there. Like, people are still aging into the millennial population. They can still afford homes. I mean, not everyone can. The super majority of the country can't. But think about it. In 2024, only about 4.5 million homes will be bought, versus there are 150 million addresses in the country, right? So only 3% of homes will be transacted. So it's the remaining 97%. And no, a lot of people are frustrated with affordability, and it's real. But just because they're frustrated with affordability doesn't mean other people can't afford to buy homes, right?
Well, and I didn't want to take you off the path of Austin. So now take all of that information and now apply it to Austin and where are we at?
Yeah, so if you look at Austin right now, the year-on-the-year growth, if we compare it to the top 100 metros, it's the second worst in the country. Housing demand is still super low. In 2022 and 2023, the demand is still much lower than the demand for the 10 previous years. Austin days on market are still high. Like, average days on market in the Austin, Round Rock, Georgetown metro area are about 70, versus the rest of the country is about 38. So it still takes longer to sell homes in Austin. Now, on the supply side, right now Austin has about 6 months of supply of inventory, right? Versus the national numbers about 4 months. And in terms of listings data, Austin has the 11th highest listings per capita in the country. So there's still a lot of supply available and not enough demand. Now new supply is still being built. This year permits for new construction were lower than last year. They were lower by about 25% than last year, which was lower than about 30% from the year before. But it's still a lot, right? Because a lot of home builders flock to Austin. And housing is if you look at housing as a commodity, there's no cartel in supply. Like OPEC has for oil prices, there's no cartel among home builders saying, hey guys, relax, let's all not build together and oversupply the market, right? So overall, we still see a lot of supply in Austin. Homes are taking about 70 days to sell, and demand is still not like fully there yet. So our bear case for Austin this year is -2, but bull case is +2. So our broad prediction for the Austin 2024 housing market is -2 to +2%. What will really influence sales is, I think, while new construction is being built, existing home owners are also selling their homes because their tax assessments are increasing so much, right? That's not the same case in California, for example, where your tax assessments can never go more than 2% a year. Austin tax assessments, some of the tax assessments we are seeing are increasing by 30, 40, 50%, right? That's a lot of taxes for someone who bought their home many, many years ago. So those people will also create more supply in the market. So, depending on how tax assessments impact Austin, we will really see, how much supply there is in the market compared to demand, and that will determine the final outcome.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of things you talk about are things that we've discussed. So we'll start with the new construction. So what we're seeing just in the market, the home builder sentiment was under 40% up until this month now, 44%. So these builders have had to really incentivize buyers to buy their product at the prices that they want. The challenge for us as agents, as realtors, is a lot of that supply sells off market. So we can't accurately tell where the pricing is on that. Is it helping the market? Is it not helping the market? So we can't see. I think that we're going to see some of these home builders, and what I'm talking to, pull back a little bit on construction. Obviously, you see the numbers come down slightly. My prediction for last year, for 2023, was that we would end not negative, not positive, but kind of flat. If you look at Travis County, and I always talk about Austin, and this is where I think for me, when I hear the big YouTubers talk about Austin and where they miss the mark, is there's 5 counties in Austin. Okay. Travis County is the main one, which is Austin. They ended up the year +2%. Williamson County, which was where a lot of the new construction is going, they ended down. Hayes County, where a lot of the construction is, down. Caldwell was the only one that was positive because they didn't have as much construction. They do have construction. And then what's the other one? Bastrop. Bastrop ended up. Why did Bastrop end up? Well, the prices in Bastrop are really low and people are moving there because of Tesla. So my question to you is given that information, that what we see on the ground in Austin, Ian and I work with a lot of sellers. My predictions for 2024 are basically around the same, that we're not going to see a huge decrease and we're not going to see a huge increase. Whereas 2 years before that, Ian and I were like, prices are going to be crazy, right? They're crazy. And then we hit July 22 or May 22 and everything just fell off the planet.
Yeah. Yeah. Our predictions primarily cover Williamson County and Travis County. So the Austin, Round Rock, Georgetown MSA, like that's how how the census defines the MSA. If you look at, Austin before, like the story before 2022, right? Number one domestic migration in the country, like number one net positive domestic migration in the country, number one wage growth in the country, number one overall population growth in the country. Everything was working well. And yes, Austin was undersupplied then, and that's why home prices were growing like crazy. But then these home builders just flocked, and they flocked in like unseen numbers. And like at one point we were tracking permits I think it was 2022 when we were tracking permits. It was something like 130,000 permits were issued in the county, versus just that year only about 40,000 homes were sold or something. So just based on permits data, it was clear like there was 4 years of supply construction coming online compared to the best year that Austin ever had, right? So since then we became bearish overall, saying, hey, like this, like builders need to just stop being overzealous on this market. They need to, there is supply missing, but it's not to the degree that they're supplying for. On top of it, homeowners are being hit with tax assessments, and they will now start selling their homes because some homeowners just can't afford these insanely high increases in tax assessments.
Home builders, I feel like they're almost a lagging indicator, just like rents, because what happens is they are chasing the employment headlines when they're hearing, oh, this is the fastest growing city, county, all that. But other than this channel, and I've been trying to look, other than this channel, I haven't, or than the Real Migos, I haven't seen people talk about what happens when they go back, right? So my question to you is, we still have a high surplus of jobs coming to the area. However, we've had a lot of tech layoffs, especially recently. We just had Microsoft let go of, or I think it was Microsoft let go of 2,000. Based on that information, based on the return to work, all of that, are you factoring that into your predictions, or how are you factoring that in?
So the way we don't look at tech layoffs, what we look at is like job openings divided by permits. So basically how many net new jobs are created as opposed to how many net new buildings, how many net new units will be available for sale. There's no easy way to track job opening data because the companies don't report their employment numbers, and it's very hard to aggregate for a city level. So instead we look at just job openings data, which is more like leading indicator as well. I mean, layoffs are definitely impacted. The second is there's a real come back to office policy that's also impacting, like Austin. It's not just Austin, Sacramento, Boise, Boston, these markets that were just like one flight away from major markets got a lot of inbound interest during the COVID years because they were like, hey, I can buy a home much bigger than the home I'm living in now and just still be a one hop away from my office, right? So but all those markets cooled down significantly after, because then they were like, hey, if I need to go to office 3 times a week, it's really not possible anymore, right? So that's the factor we've seen in terms of layoffs. It's very hard to directly correlate that with like ground level data because it's not apples to apples, but we'll dig more into that and get back to you.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to see a bullwhip effect basically over the next couple of years, right? Where builders are going to have to, I've sold real estate in Austin for 10 years. Up until 2020, I would say 2018, 2019 was a lot harder to sell homes. 18, 19, because there was more inventory. We were close to two and a half months inventory. If you look how Austin reports the numbers, we're at 3 months inventory. Now, what you look at is a different number, I would assume, but Austin's at 3 months. I imagine we'll hit a 4-month inventory the way we put our data out pretty soon. We're going to probably be at 3.3, 3.4 for January, around there, only going up. I don't really have a question there.
Yeah, the 6-month number comes from the Redfin data source on week supply for Austin, Texas, and that's the way Redfin defines Austin, Texas. Just for that data, that's just clarifying. Yeah, sorry, what's your question?
Yeah, and that's fine. It's probably because how we report our numbers, how they probably report pending and sold into that, right? Do they actually keep pending?
Yes, exactly. There's always two ways to track month supply. If a home is sold, listed and immediately sold, then is it factored into month supply or not, right? That's what, like, some indexes do factor, some indexes don't. So what we do is we just track the same indexes over time. So it's more about trends than the data itself. And the trend is looking like it's slowly increasing into, winter month supply is always at the highest, right? So only after spring will we see like real month supply numbers.
Okay. So let me ask you this then. I know we got to go soon. We're already over your time that we allowed. So what would your advice be to buyers and sellers, right? Because that's what we do on this channel. We talk to buyers and sellers. What would your advice for Austin area? What would your advice be to them for 2024 going forward?
Long term, if you're going to own a home and, if you're going to live in it for at least 5 to 10 years, you should buy, right? You can always refinance. And that's the beauty of a 30-year mortgage. You have the option to refinance into the lowest rate in 30 years at any time. So, it's date the rate, marry the home. Buy now if you're going to live there for long term. If it's like you're just testing Austin out, you might have to sell in a couple of years and incur, costs of selling and all that. Doesn't make sense, right? Because rents are lower than mortgages right now. So you will net end up saving money if it's a short-term plan for you. In terms of home sellers, they're still, unless they're selling home just from a few years ago, anyone who's selling home from more than, 20, if they bought, like, let's say before 2021, 2022, most of them are, even after paying fees and commissions, are going to end up net positive, right? So if you have to sell your home, you can. But if you're locked into a really low rate and the monthly cost of that is going to be lower than the rent you can get on your home, then just rent it out. And that's what most home sellers are doing anyways, right?
I feel like you took the words from both of our mouths that we constantly say. It's really funny because there's a lot of people out there that are they just hate realtors, right? All realtors just sell homes, right? And Ian and I are always like, hey, look, if it doesn't make sense, don't buy. And then we're always accused of telling people to buy all the time. Well, when is the right time to buy a home? When it meets your budget and you can afford it and you're going to live in it a while. That's the best time. So is right now a good time to buy? Yeah, I think right now is a great time to buy. That being said, I think it's a great time to buy because I think over the next 2 years, you're going to see the bottoming of the market for Austin. We're seeing that boomerang effect, right? That bullwhip effect. Builders will start pulling back. All of these large scale multifamilies are going to start pulling back. And then that bullwhip's going to start to come back a little bit. And so, like, I think we're at the kind of the start of the bottom of where our pricing is going to be. And then it's going to start gradually going back up. That's my prediction for the Austin market. So I'm telling buyers, like, look, if you're going to buy right now, make sure you hold. Don't exactly what you just said. Don't buy and sell in 2 years. I think a lot of people that bought at the height of the market are now in trouble. And that's why we may see some foreclosures coming up, is because they bought in high and circumstances changed back, had to go back to work or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Delinquency data is increasing. Data is increasing like month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year. But it's still, there are two things about it. One, it's super low compared to 2008. It's still about 3 to 4%. Compared to 2008, it reached like high single digit, low double digit percentages. The second is delinquencies are not translating to foreclosures. Most delinquencies after 30, 60, 90 days of missed payments are just selling their home if they have positive equity in them, because it makes more sense to sell the home and cash your equity out than go to a foreclosure and lose everything, right? So, but yeah, and people who have just bought in the last 2 years and have to sell right now, it doesn't make any sense to them because they're going to lose, so much money in fees and commissions, plus in their home drop in, value, that they will either take a net loss or they will, Just it will happen. It will recreate the same scenario as 2008, where the average home tenures will go up dramatically, because now you're just locked into your home for a very long time because it's so much underwater compared to when you bought it for.
Yep.
So I'm going to ask one last question, and it's a political question, but I'm not looking for a political answer. Okay. The question is, do you think, however the election sways, will affect the home market in Austin? Very clear about that. Do you think, based on what direction it sways, it will affect positively or negatively the home market in Austin, Texas?
The only criteria that we are tracking with respect to elections is, it's not just who comes into the White House and who comes into Congress and Senate, but also how influential the White House is over the Federal Open Market Committee, the FOMC. The Biden White House has not, at least publicly, been as influential towards Jerome Powell and the FOMC as the Trump White House was in the past, right? They were much more influential, both publicly and seems privately as well. So, the Fed, there are still a lot of detractors of Fed saying, hey, they increase rates too high too quickly and they need to drop them, right? Versus there are a lot of people who are like, hey, let's stay higher for longer, but keep decreasing 325 bip drops this year. I think the Fed policy is going to be much more influential on the Austin housing market and the national housing market than anything else. And the results of the election are only correlated to this in terms of how influential they are to the Federal Open Market Committee than anything else.
That was a beautiful answer.
Yeah.
That's a very good answer.
I've always found, and this is just in our market, that election years are always tough years in real estate, because people are a little more scared, and then once the thing happens, then they go out and like, okay, fine, it's over. So, well, awesome. Well, Nick, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on here. If you ever need anything from an Austin agent in the future, you got 2 ones right here that want to.
Yeah, I'll definitely come over and grab a drink. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Next time you're in Austin, definitely send us an email and we'll definitely meet you up for a drink. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks so much for setting this up. Take it easy.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.